Greetings, spear beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Perfect Society. I'm Ur Hoffman, and you're watching the broadcast Trump's Secret Assassinations Program. So, lots of people think, let's go to the picture slideshow, that Trump had Epstein killed, there were markings in his neck, etc. When you Google this, then you have to put it between these quotation marks, double quotations, the comma basically next to the enter key, double commas, and put a plus sign in front of it. Then it only finds pages with that exact quote. The other thing was let me think. The rape allegations also filed in court. The Katie Johnson testimony. She alleged that she was tied to the bed with pantyhose and raped by Trump when she was 13. And there are loads of other women that have filed charges against against Trump in court as well. And I've covered that list as well in the broadcast. But of course, it's innocent till proven guilty. And what I'm going to do is cover some articles. Let's begin at the beginning here. When I Google plus and then between quotation marks Trump is a murderer, then it finds these things. It usually opens with The Intercept. Donald Trump murdered Qasem Soleimani. But many people are more interested in other murder allegations because they think it's relevant to prevent a world war. If he's a murderer and a rapist, then perhaps he's also up to creating a world war and reducing the global population to 500 million to build the third temple, etc. So if I Google just Trump is a murderer without quotation marks, then I get other results. Interesting. So there you can see the results. You can Google all this for yourselves. So the first articles, basically the article that I'm going to cover is shown later. So that I retrieved that first and then I started Googling some more and then I decided, hey, let's put this between quotation marks. So on CameronRiley.com we read Trump is a murderer, January 10th, 2020. On The Intercept, James Risen explains that the US has a ban on assassination and that Trump's killing of Soleimani is pretty much clear-cut murder. Well, their allegation is that he was a terrorist, so they don't see it as a murder, basically. Or am I wrong about this? Let me know in the comments what you all think. On Twitter.com, Eva Gollinger reported the assassination last week of Iranian Major General Qasem Soleimani was a state-sponsored murder, but no one in the Washington establishment seems prepared to come out and say the hard truth. Donald Trump is a murderer. Well, apparently there are others. America is ruled by a murderer. Global research. And they also mention General Qasem Soleimani. So that's pretty much old news. I think I'll also read this article up at news.com. Donald Trump is a murderer, and they have also listed other allegations, other ways in which he's a murderer, basically. They've been attacking my broadcast area. I've reported about it. Directed energy weapon attacks are real. There are thousands of targeted individuals reporting regularly, and they're using scalar wave harassment, not microwave harassment. And they don't need a chip in people's brain to read their mind, etc. So that is also how people are manipulated without their knowledge or consent. Synthetic telepathy since 1974 means that we're not in a democracy but in a non-fictional cyberocracy. So people can be hypnotized at night, and then if that was done successfully, they wouldn't remember it, and they do what they're programmed to do at the time they're programmed to do it. And again, even if they've done something, they can have forgotten about it because of the hypnosis, the Manchurian candidate, etc. Okay, so I'm gonna read this article that consists out of two parts on op-ed-news.com, and what's this? Resist. Trump is a murderer. Iraqi man dies after Trump administration deports him. The man, Jimmy Al-Daoud, spent most of his life in the US, was swept up, etc. Then RollingStone.com. Trump attorney, president could get away with murder literally. In shocking appellate court argument, a lawyer for President Trump insisted he couldn't be prosecuted while in office, even for killing in cold blood. So initially I googled Trump murdered. Trump's secret assassinations program. So that's the article I want to read. It's not very long. So I'm gonna read that first. Under Trump, US airstrikes are killing more civilians. Potential new White House policies may increase civilian killings during airstrikes. Salon.com reported in 2017, and I already covered Trump revokes Obama rule on reporting drone strike deaths. 7th of March 2019, reported by the BBC. So check my channel, trysomething.vegetarian here on YouTube, if you would like to see that video as well. So let's go to this article. This is reprieve.org.uk. Okay, I'm not gonna read it myself. Starting up Balabolka, the free text-to-speech engine thing.
Trump's secret assassinations program. Image of Trump with drones in the background. By MayDay, director of Reprieve. 1 year on from a disastrous operation in Yemen that left 10 children dead, we take a look at President Trump's secret assassinations program, its origins in the Bush and Obama administrations, and its horrifying escalation in the last year. It was approved by President Trump casually over dinner, a midnight trade-in drone strike on the village of Gla in Yemen. Concerns about the quality of the intelligence and legality of the operation would later prove to be warnings he should have heeded, but he gave the order anyway. What happened next left 10 children dead and was described by President Trump as a win. Reprieve's investigations have revealed that it was anything but. Instead, we have uncovered violations of international law that led to an appalling loss of life. 23 innocent people were killed in Gla, including 10 children aged 12 years and under, and an elderly man of 80. Even senior.
So that's in the town of Yakla. Let's see. Raid on Yakla. The raid on Yakla was a United States-led Special Operations Forces operation carried out on January 29, 2017 in Al-Gayil, a village in the Yakla area of the Al-Baida province in central Yemen during the Yemeni Civil War, January 29, 2017.
"23 innocent people were killed in Kla, including 10 children aged 12 years and under, and an elderly man of 80. Even senior officials in the U.S. administration have said the raid produced no significant intelligence and that almost everything went wrong on the night in question. To understand what happened that night, we have to go back to a promise made by the Bush administration. Following the horrors of Guantanamo and the CIA's program of rendition and torture, the U.S. decided to do away with the discomfort of detaining people. In an attempt to avoid scrutiny, legal accountability and international condemnation for its barbaric practices, the U.S. decided it would resort to killing people, covertly. Instead, the targeted killing program began.
If any of you know about Trump killing other people as well, there's something with dropped frames at the moment. If you know of other alleged killings, who he killed and why, etc. Also, you could report anonymous to me, then I can report about it on YouTube. Of course, I'm not going to take the position that he killed someone without any evidence. I'm not accusing him myself, I'm just covering online material. Because otherwise people can be sued for slander, etc. But if you know any information, contact me via Prologic 999, number 999 with Prologic in front of it. It's one word, on Skype.
Drones circled villages in Yemen, Pakistan and Somalia, watching, listening and killing. The program grew exponentially under President Obama, and so did the death toll. The U.S. government compiled a kill list of suspected enemies, who were targeted for assassination. Following their tradition of using sinister euphemisms to conceal wrongdoing, it was named the Disposition Matrix. Over 250 children have been killed in Pakistan and Yemen. But the targeted killing program turned out to be anything but targeted. The CIA's own leaked documents concede that the U.S. often does not know who it is killing, and that militant leaders account for just 2% of drone-related deaths. Over 250 children have been killed in Pakistan and Yemen. The program requires no clear evidence that an attack will take place. Due process is laid to waste and there is no scrutiny or accountability for U.S. actions. More than 80% of those killed have never even been identified by name. In numerous attempts to kill one individual, the CIA killed 76 children and 29 adults, while totally failing to assassinate their target. To get around the problem of civilian casualties, everyone in a strike zone was classified as a combatant. Then Trump became president. In his first year in office, President Trump has overseen a dramatic increase in drone strikes in Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan and Somalia, all countries against which the U.S. is not officially engaged in a war. The first year of the Trump administration has resulted in more loss of life from drone strikes than all 8 years of Obama's presidency. 1. Trump ripped up the limited safeguards President Obama put in place. This is now industrial-scale executions, hugely expanded in both scale and callousness, conducted with no regard for human life or human rights. The first year of the Trump administration has resulted in more loss of life from drone strikes than all 8 years of Obama's presidency. The international human rights law that governs the use of lethal force outside of armed conflict permits the use of lethal force only in very narrow circumstances, specifically, only where it is strictly unavoidable in order to defend against an imminent threat of death. But Trump's raids and strikes across the globe, exemplified by the disastrous Operation Inkla, follow a pattern of ill-considered and legally questionable operations. The purpose of the raid in Inkla was initially reported as being to capture or kill a suspected terrorist leader. However, it quickly emerged that he was not in the village at the time. Then the story changed. The U.S. indicated that the aim of the highly successful mission was, instead, to gather intelligence. Once again, it was a case of targeted killing, missing the target and massacring civilians instead. In the words of U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis, this operation, carried out a year ago today, was a game changer. He is right. Now the world can see the scale and reckless brutality of the atrocities being committed by the Trump administration as part of an ill-conceived, unchecked and never-ending war on terror.
Okay, that was the whole article. I think it was well written, to the point, not too lengthy. Reprieve.org UK Trump's secret assassinations program. People can read the whole article for themselves. The US decided to do away with the discomfort of detaining people in an attempt to avoid scrutiny, legal accountability, and international condemnation for its barbaric practices. The US decided it would resort to killing people covertly instead. They write. Bush administration. I remember something about secret laws and the kill list of Bush, etc. The targeted killing program began. Drones circled villages in Yemen, Pakistan, and Somalia, watching, listening, and killing. The program grew exponentially under President Obama, and so did the death toll. The US government compiled a quote kill list unquote of suspected enemies who are targeted for assassination, following their tradition of using sinister euphemisms to conceal wrongdoing. It was named, quote, the Disposition Matrix. Is that real? I can Google this. Disposition Matrix, Wikipedia. Let's read it first then. I should have known this.
The Disposition Matrix, informally known as a kill list, is a database of information for tracking, capturing, rendering, or killing suspected enemies of the United States. 1. Developed by the Obama administration beginning in 2010, it goes beyond existing kill lists and is intended to become a permanent fixture of U.S. policy. 1. The process determining criteria for killing is not public and was heavily shaped by National Counterterrorism Director.
So how about state-sponsored terrorism and people that advocate a population reduction to 500 million, doing away with the US and other countries and imposing their satanic Luciferian totalitarian global government? Aren't they enemies of the US in the sense of the Constitution as well? And haven't the American people taken an oath to protect the United States against enemies foreign and domestic? So are they prosecuting these people that advocate this population reduction? The government's job is to protect and serve, not to reduce the global population and tyrannize people into submission with directed energy torture weapons.
And former Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, Director John O'Brennan. 2. The White House, National Counterterrorism Center, NCTC, and CIA spokespeople have declined to comment on the database. Officials have stated privately that kill lists will expand for at least another decade, if not indefinitely. One official stated it's a necessary part of what we do. 1. Paul R. Pillar, the former deputy director of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, has stated, "We are looking at something that is potentially indefinite." 1. The database's existence was revealed in a 3-part series published by the Washington Post newspaper. Predator drone launching a Hellfire missile of the kind used to kill terrorism suspects. Purpose: we can't possibly kill everyone who wants to harm us. It's a necessary part of what we do. We're not going to wind up in 10 years in a world of everybody holding hands and saying, "We love America." Unnamed senior Obama administration official, The Washington Post, October 23, 2012. 1. The creation of the Disposition Matrix database is part of an effort embraced by White House counterterrorism advisor John Brennan to codify the targeted killing policies developed by President Barack Obama. Under the George W. Bush administration, Brennan served as top aide to CIA Director George Tenet, where he defended the administration's use of extraordinary rendition, enhanced interrogation, and torture by definition according to international standards. 3. Brennan's association with the CIA's interrogation program was controversial and forced him to withdraw his candidacy for directorship of the CIA or national intelligence in 2008. 4. According to the New York Times, Brennan was the principal coordinator of U.S. kill lists. Former Obama administration counterterrorism official Daniel Benjamin has stated that Brennan probably had more power and influence than anyone in a comparable position in the last 20 years. 5. The database's creation also accompanied an expansion of the drone fleet, turning the CIA into a paramilitary force according to the Washington Post. It is associated with increased Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, operations in Africa, and increased JSOC involvement in forming kill lists. 1. The database has unified originally separate but overlapping kill lists maintained by both JSOC and the CIA, and was originally proposed by former NCTC Director Michael Leiter. 1. Scope: John Brennan, former Director of the Central Intelligence Agency and Chief Counterterrorism Advisor to U.S. President Barack Obama. The Disposition Matrix database catalogs biographies, locations, associates, and affiliations of suspects. It also catalogs strategies for finding, capturing, or killing suspects, or subjecting them to extraordinary rendition. 1. The database continues to direct U.S. operations in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia and Yemen, and will facilitate expanded operations in Algeria, Egypt, Mali, Libya, Iran, and throughout East Africa. 1. A clear example of the expansion of targeted killing as managed by the database is the U.S. military base in Djibouti City, Djibouti, near Somalia. 6. Called Camp Limonar and originally created by the French Foreign Legion, the camp has quietly transformed into the largest overseas U.S. drone base outside of Afghanistan. About 3,200 U.S. soldiers, contractors and civilians are assigned to the camp, 300 of whom are special operations personnel. 6. One terrorism suspect on the Disposition Matrix is Somali citizen Ahmed Abdul Qadir Warsaim, who is currently a prisoner of the United States being held in New York. 1. Process: I tend to do what I think is right. But I find much more comfort, I guess, in the views and values of this president. John Brennan in August 2012, The Washington Post, October 24, 2012. 2. The database eliminates the prior system of dual, but not judicial, scrutiny by both the Pentagon and the National Security Council, instead using a streamlined system in which suspects are designated by multiple agencies and ultimately presented to Brennan. 1. The head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, responsible for carrying out orders to kill suspects on the list, no longer contributes to the decision of whether or not to kill them. 1. Instead, the National Counterterrorism Center plays a greater role in determining targets, which they generate at the request of the White House. The criteria and decisions determining who may be targeted for killing are developed in large part by John Brennan, who wields enormous power in shaping decisions on kill lists and the allocation of armed drones. 2. Targets are reviewed every 3 months with input from the CIA and GSOC, before being passed on to top officials in the NCTC, CIA, GSOC, the National Security Council, Pentagon, and U.S. State Department. 1. Ultimately, the authority to kill a suspect outside Pakistan must be approved by the President. 1. The review process also allows the killing of individuals whose identities are unknown, but who are thought to be engaged in certain activities, for instance packing a vehicle with explosives. 1. Targets are often chosen based on metadata. 7-8. As reported previously, United States citizens may be listed as targets for killing in the database. 9. Suspects are not formally charged of any crime or offered a trial in their own defense. 10. Obama administration lawyers have asserted that U.S. citizens alleged to be members of Al-Qaeda and said to pose an imminent threat of violent attack against the United States may be killed without judicial process. 11. The legal arguments of U.S. officials for this policy were leaked to NBC News in February 2013, in the form of briefing papers summarizing legal memos from October 2011. 11. Endorsement. U.S. officials have described the Disposition Matrix as legally and morally sound, and the Washington Post has written that internal doubts about the effectiveness of the drone campaign are almost non-existent. 1. U.S. President Barack Obama has called the decision to kill U.S. citizen and terrorism suspect Anwar al-Awlaki an easy one. 9. And shares counterterrorism views with Brennan, the principal architect of the criteria used when making suspects targets in the database. Referring to President Obama's view of drone strikes, Brennan has stated, "I don't think we've had a disagreement." 2. U.S. officials speaking to the Washington Post seemed confident that they have devised an approach that is so bureaucratically, legally and morally sound that future administrations will follow suit. 1. Brennan, a principal architect of the Disposition Matrix, stated in April 2012 that in order to ensure that our counterterrorism operations involving the use of lethal force are legal, ethical, and wise, President Obama has demanded that we hold ourselves to the highest possible standards and processes. 12. The Obama administration's drone program received approval from Republican Party presidential candidate Mitt Romney during the 2012 U.S. presidential elections. 1-3. Robert M. Chesney has written for the Lawfare blog that it certainly is a good thing to create an information management tool that makes certain that officials across agencies and departments can have real-time, comprehensive understanding of the options available, practically, legally, diplomatically, etc., in the event specific persons turn up in specific places. 13. He has also argued that the Washington Post article describing the program falsely implies that it has been associated with a change in U.S. counterterrorism policy. 13. According to research by the RAND Corporation, drone strikes are associated with decreases in both the frequency and the lethality of militant attacks overall and inide and suicide attacks specifically. 14. The number of U.S. drone strikes significantly increased under Trump administration. 15-16. Criticism. Anyone who thought U.S. targeted killing outside of armed conflict was a narrow, emergency-based exception to the requirement of due process before a death sentence is being proven conclusively wrong. The American Civil Liberties Union, October 23, 2012. 17. Pakistani Interior Minister Rehman Malik has stated that 336 U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan claimed over 2,300 victims, 80% of whom were innocent civilians. 3. A 2012 Pew Research Center poll found that 74% of Pakistanis believe that the U.S. is the enemy, an increase from prior years. 18. The American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, has condemned the database, writing in a press release that anyone who thought U.S. targeted killing outside of armed conflict was a narrow, emergency-based exception to the requirement of due process before a death sentence is being proven conclusively wrong. 17. It has also filed Freedom of Information requests regarding the database and filed a lawsuit challenging its constitutionality. 17. After the Obama administration ordered the extrajudicial killings of 3 American citizens, Zamir Khan, Anwar al-Awlaki, and al-Awlaki's 16-year-old son Abdulrahman, attorney Nate Wessler of the ACLU's National Security Project sued the lawless Obama administration. In an interview with Bobby Powell, host of the independent news program The Truth is Viral, Wessler stated that Obama, and those working for him, had assumed the duties of judge, jury, and executioner all by themselves. 1920. Glenn Greenwald has written that the central role played by the NCTC in determining who should be killed is rather odious. The NCTC operates a gigantic data mining operation, in which all sorts of information about innocent Americans is systematically monitored, stored, and analyzed. 21. Greenwald concludes that the Disposition Matrix has established simultaneously a surveillance state and a secretive, unaccountable judicial body that analyzes who you are and then decrees what should be done with you, how you should be disposed of, beyond the reach of any minimal accountability or transparency. 21. Former counterterrorism specialist and military intelligence officer Philip Giraldi has criticized the Disposition Matrix's everyday killing of targets with what he calls little or no evidence, leaving the White House completely unaccountable. 22-23, Giraldi later commented that Brennan feels the drone program has run its course as a CIA operation. 24. Minneapolis anti-war protest, Stop Killer Drones, May 5, 2013 and April 2016, peace worker and tribal elder Malik Joel, who appears to have been targeted by repeated drone strikes, was invited to the United Kingdom, UK, by Ken MacDonald in order to explain to the UK's Houses of Parliament that his life and those of his friends and relatives are at risk due to his reported presence on the list. 25-26. Criticizing strikes organized under the aegis of the database, the World Socialist website has written that the great majority of those killed in Pakistan are targeted for resisting the U.S. occupation of neighboring Afghanistan, while in Yemen they are killed for opposing the U.S.-backed regime there. 3. Regarding the effect of the database in the United States, the site has written that the Obama administration has arrogated to itself the most extreme power that can be asserted by any dictatorship, that of ordering citizens put to death without presenting charges against them, much less proving them in a court of law. 3. They later criticized the relative silence in the media and the political establishment following the revelation. 27. In 2016, New York Daily News journalist Gersh Kuntzman has criticized the U.S. government's drone assassination program, and has even implied that the Obama administration may be guilty of war crimes. 28. In a commentary reprinted by Eurasia Review, Russia Today has called strikes directed by the database targeted executions and extrajudicial murders, and rhetorically asked how the database will further U.S. counterterrorism policies if it alienates its allies. 29. Describing the criteria for killing established by the database and drone program, Voice of Russia has written that in essence, this means that based on intelligence evidence, the administration assumes the right to judge and execute anyone without bothering about such minor things as proper court hearings, or the right of the accused person for proper legal defense. 30. It has accused the Obama administration of violating U.S. principles of due process, stating, "The fact that such operations clearly violate the principles propagated by the U.S. itself, like the right of everyone for legal defense, does not seem to bother the administration." 30. UN Special Rapporteur Ben Emerson said the U.S. may have committed war crimes in its campaign of drone strikes. Speaking at Harvard Law School on October 25, 2012, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Counterterrorism, Ben Emerson, stated that he would launch an investigation unit within the special procedures of the Human Rights Council to inquire into individual drone attacks. 31. Emerson and Christoph Haynes, UN Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial, Summary or Arbitrary Executions, have described some U.S. drone attacks as war crimes. 31-32, Emerson said that U.S. drone strikes may have violated international humanitarian law. 33-34. John Hudson, writing in the Atlantic Wire, has raised the concern that from a semantic perspective, the term disposition matrix sanitizes and perhaps obscures the more descriptive phrase kill list. 35. The United States Senate is split over how to handle the issue, with Democrats urging the creation of a special court to review the matrix. Senate Armed Services Committee Chair John McCain called for control of all armed drones to be transferred from the CIA to the U.S. Department of Defense. 36. While Dianne Feinstein has expressed doubt that the Pentagon would take the same level of care to avoid collateral damage. 37. An American journalist and Syrian Civil War correspondent Bilal Abdulkarim reported drone assassination attempts by the U.S. military, which killed random civilians that were present nearby, including 2 attacks on vehicles he was traveling in, including one where the car he was sitting in was blown up by a missile shot from a drone. 38, 39, 40, 41. In 2017, he filed a lawsuit against the United States government in the District of Columbia, claiming they had attempted to assassinate him, and requesting his removal from the disposition matrix. 42-43. Drone strike casualties. See also, civilian casualties from U.S. drone strikes. Reports on civilian casualties in Pakistan resulting from U.S. drone attacks have been compiled by a number of institutions including the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, the Long War Journal, the New America Foundation, and researchers at Stanford University and New York University Law Schools. 44. The New York Times reported that the Obama administration embraced a disputed method for counting civilian casualties, which in effect counts all military-age males in a strike zone as combatants, giving partial explanation to the official claims of extraordinarily low collateral deaths. 45. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism, (DPJ), reports that between 2004 and 2012, CIA-directed drone strikes killed 475 to 885 Pakistani civilians, of 2,593 to 3,378 persons killed altogether. 46-47, the report finds that drone strikes killed 176 children, and injured an additional 1,250 or more people. 46. The DPJ report estimates that drone strikes in Pakistan declined from 904 to 228 between 2010 and 2012. 48. Graph of average casualties in drone strikes ordered by the United States in Yemen, 2002 present. 49. DPJ reports that during the same time frame, drone strikes killed 60 to 163 Yemeni civilians, of 362 to 1,052 persons killed altogether in Yemen, including 24 to 34 children. Strikes killed 11 to 57 Somali civilians, of 58 to 170 persons killed in Somalia, including 1 to 3 children. 46. The Long War Journal, LWJ, published by the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, 44. Reports that 136 Pakistani civilians have been killed by drone attacks since 2006.
So that graph shows only in Yemen, basically. $205 people killed in 2012. Many people don't know that there are 60 to 70,000 troops in the Middle East already. So the mainstream media usually reports about sending 10,000, 13,000 troops, etc. And usually they don't list how many troops there are already present in the Middle East. US Central Command has reported that, I think. So people can Google it.
According to LWJ, the majority of drone strikes in Pakistan since 2004 occurred under the Obama administration, which has ordered over 247 strikes since 2009, compared the Bush administration's 45. 5152. The New America Foundation, NAF, has published a report titled Year of the Drone, finding that between 2004 and 2012, U.S. drone strikes killed 1,618 to 2,769 militants, of 1,908 to 3,225 killed altogether in Pakistan. 53. The Foundation also found that during the same period, reported civilian casualties from drone strikes were 15 to 16%, dropping from 60% in 2006 to 1 to 2% in 2012. 53-54. A report by researchers at Stanford and New York University Law Schools, working at the Stanford International Human Rights and Conflict Resolution Clinic and at the Global Justice Clinic, has evaluated casualty reports produced by BIJ, LWJ and NAF, also conducting its own interviews with witnesses and victims. 44-55. The report finds that casualty estimates obtained by BIJ are the best currently available, while it finds omissions and inconsistencies in New America Foundation's dataset, and challenges their finding that civilian casualties have been low in 2012. 44-56. The report criticizes reliance on anonymous officials for estimates of civilian casualties, and widespread use of the term militant by the media when describing non-civilian casualties. 44. The report concurs with that published by the NAF, stating the number of high-level targets killed by drone strikes in Pakistan constitutes about 2% of all drone strike casualties. 55. Meg Brolin, an author of the NAF study, has written that the Stanford and New York University researchers were not impartial, adding that while the U.S. government's claims that civilian casualties from drone strikes during Obama's term in office are in the single digits are manifestly untrue, there is no need to overstate the rate of civilian deaths to make the point that drone strikes are legally suspect and morally hazardous. 57. The Intercept reported, between January 2012 and February 2013, U.S. Special Operations airstrikes, in northeastern Afghanistan, killed more than 200 people. Of those, only 35 were the intended targets, during one 5-month period of the operation. According to the documents, nearly 90% of the people killed in airstrikes were not the intended targets. "90% of the people killed in airstrikes were not the intended targets." See also Main Corps Targeted Killing, Extrajudicial Killing, Joint Special Operations Command, Executive Actions of the CIA Threat Matrix, a similar program led by Pakistan Joint Prioritized Effects List, an earlier list, known colloquially as the Kill or Capture List.
Lots of mainstream media have reported about the bounty on Trump's head. I also did a broadcast about it. And I think that there's no way that they could collect it alive. And I also have my doubts if the money exists anywhere. I haven't investigated deeply enough. But let's read the op-ed-news.com article. Donald Trump is a murderer, they write. Let's read.
Op-ed News Op-eds April 7, 2019 at 14:16 and 48 seconds H-Toad April 7, 2019 Donald Trump is a murderer by Doug Thompson, page 1 of 2 pages. From Capitol Hill Blue. Trump and his appointees kill children with reckless abandon. President Trump meets with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. President Trump meets with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
So the article is originally from CapitolHillBlue.com, so then I can read that version. I wonder if he would call himself a murderer. I doubt that.
Donald Trump murders people. He kills them without remorse, without shame he should feel, and does so with immoral prejudice. He's a murderer. Even if he's a one-term president, Trump will have caused, directly or indirectly, the premature deaths of a large number of Americans, writes Paul Krugman of the New York Times. Writes Krugman in the April 4th edition of the Times. Some of those deaths will come at the hands of right-wing, white nationalist extremists, who are a rapidly growing threat, partly because they feel empowered by a president who calls them very fine people. Some will come from failures of governance, like the inadequate response to Hurricane Maria, which surely contributed to the high death toll in Puerto Rico. Reminder: Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. Some will come from the administration's continuing efforts to sabotage Obamacare, which have failed to kill health reform but have stalled the decline in the number of uninsured, meaning that many people still aren't getting the health care they need. Of course, if Trump gets his way and eliminates Obamacare altogether, things on this front will get much, much worse. In America, all but 7 states have laws that consider anyone who is involved in actions that result in needless death can be charged with murder. Trump's actions result in unnecessary and needless deaths throughout America. Thousands of U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico died because Trump intentionally delayed needed rescue efforts during disasters. Thousands have been slaughtered by the heinous white supremacists Trump emboldened by his unwillingness to condemn their actions and called them, as Krugman noted, very fine people. Elsewhere in the world, Trump's unflinching support for a murderous leader like Russia's Vladimir Putin put a U.S. seal of approval on the deaths of thousands of Russian dissidents. The same can be said of Trump's support of North Korea's homicidal Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un or his nasty habit of looking the other way at the dismemberment and murder of Jamal Khashoggi, an American citizen, by a Saudi prince who helped the Trump family make millions on building projects. Trump's sleazy cutback on federal regulations on the meat industry has increased deaths from foodborne illness and the hundred of deaths from just 2 recent crashes of Boeing 737 MAX 8 jetliners are tracing back to cutbacks by fair regulation of the airline industry. Trump put a former Boeing senior officer in charge of the FAA. Trump and his appointees kill children with reckless abandon. Youngsters taken from their parents by reckless immigration agents acting under the president's direction led to their deaths alone in prisons along the border. Hundreds of children received serious and fatal injuries from Britax's stroller that kept losing wheels, causing them to trip over and slam children into sidewalks and pavements. When the company refused to issue a voluntary recall, a forced one was imposed until Trump appointees stopped the action. Trump, who monitored and approved stopping the recall, offered no explanation or apology to the hundreds of parents whose children were seriously injured, their faces smashed and deformed, or those who died. The record is definitive, and no amount of lies by his supporters to claim otherwise cannot sidetrack the truth. Trump is a murderer and he should be punished as such.
CapitolHillBlue.com. People can read the article. Perhaps I can post the titles and the links to the articles in the description of this video. There are add-ons for this, so that you can copy the title and the link to the article or YouTube video. Rolling Stone. Well, I don't really think that's interesting enough. So the best article is at the beginning of this video. Or perhaps you think the second article was better. Trump revokes Obama rule on reporting drone strike deaths, 7th of March 2019, bbc.com. And I did a dark mode skin for Wiki. So let us all know what you think in the comments. Do you think it's a crying shame, or do you think it's good that Trump did these attacks, etc.? What do you all think of state-sponsored terrorism, US state-sponsored terrorism, and Iran state-sponsored terrorism? Shouldn't the government set the right example? What is the world coming to? Can we have a world peace agreement between all countries, so that if one country, one government or one leader tries to invade another country, all countries of the world are united against that leader or person or military group, so that a world war can never erupt with all these allies, etc. It's like they've set it all up like a set of dominoes. Any other interesting articles? America is ruled by a murderer, January 5th, 2020, by Peter Koenig on Global Research. I'm reading it a bit to see if there are words in there that are not allowed, or if this is okay for YouTube. Well, it's about Soleimani. Preventing them from importing life-saving medication, medical equipment and food. He is responsible for countless deaths, going into the millions, stemming from regular wars with guns and bombs, and from his financial economic wars by, quote, sanctioning, quote, countries which are not willing to bend to the Washington dictate, it is, preventing them from importing life-saving medication, medical equipment and food. In Venezuela alone, according to a recent study carried out by the renowned Center for Economic Policy Research, CEPR, not CFR. In Washington, D.C., at least 40,000 people have perished since the beginning of 2017 due to U.S., between brackets, Trump sanctions. This figure has since considerably increased. They also write, yes, there is no doubt Trump is a murderer, and yes, he is not alone. Well, people can read the whole article on globalresearch.ca. It has the title, America is ruled by a murderer. nothing too shocking. I was wondering, perhaps there are other women that he raped, that he killed, that didn't report about it. If you know any such allegations, then please Skype Prologic 999 and I can do a video about it. So it is pretty shocking when lots of innocent people die. That's not a good thing. I think it's also not good for the image of the US and Trump's image. And shouldn't we put the world first instead of our own country? One theory I have is we can look at other countries, and the country with the best form of governance can be copied, basically, so our governments can be made the same as any other government, in theory. And lots of these forms of government, lots of governments are supposed to be democratic, democratically elected leaders, etc. But I don't believe in electronic voting, like I've made clear. They can easily count these votes by hand. Then I would accept the results as such. But since we've had the Tesla technology since the 1900 era began, it's possible that electronic voting has always been completely rigged with this wireless energy technology, also used to control the cancer-causing Tachinales planes at ground zero. So that can be used not just to control the human mind, to scan people's minds, the brainwave, to read their thoughts and see what they see on a monitor. But also to remotely switch equipment on and off. And that's what a computer is continuously doing, ones and zeros, on or off. Is the only option, so in reality you could argue it's a stupid machine, simple, and then it depends on the software what it can do. But it means they can take over the computer and also control people's brainwaves to a certain extent. And the neural network even has time travel capability, which I think, because I've had precognitive visions, and because the first precognitive vision was through an IPTEC camera that was later hit out of my hands by police officers because I was praying in Amsterdam, and I first had to finish the prayer before I could respond to the officer. Anyway, because it was filmed through that IPTEC camera, I think it's not my remote viewing capability, though I cannot be 100% certain, because basically we have a scalar interferometer between our ears. A scalar weapon, you could argue. Especially if we'd be part of some illegal or legal spy network. So these voice-to-skull messages are legal, and everybody without a Tesla plasma shield is a targeted individual. And I wouldn't make these accusations myself, but they've explained themselves. We could check the definition of a murderer. How would they define that, they change that with synthetic telepathy, define into divine. somebody that kills another person. That is not guilty of anything. Or that is not guilty of murder. Definition of murder: one who murders, especially one who commits the crime of murder. Well, that helps when you don't know what murder means. Murder.
Murder. Murder. The unlawful premeditated killing of one human being by another. A very difficult or unpleasant task or experience. Kill someone unlawfully and with premeditation. Punish severely or be very angry with.
So that's from dictionary.com, I think. They also have a good thesaurus. If you click on the left side next to the search thing, and you can find the origin of these words. Also, probably if you click on this thing, is there no link to dictionary.com? But we should do the opposite, save lives, of course. Murdering people is easy, it's a far bigger challenge, much cooler to control factors that control aging and stay out of prison, etc. Don't be fooled by fictional deities. They're just illegal voice-to-skull messages, probably from the intelligence agencies controlled by these Jesuits, according to Citizens Action Network on Facebook. But that's an altered image, so the original had Adolfo Nicolas on it, but now their leader is Arturo Souza, so the story stays the same, I guess. Wanted murderers, FBI.gov. I'm in Europe, so then there's not much use in looking at that, but perhaps they also, well, there are websites for that as well. On dictionary.com.
Intelligence.
So here we have the definitions, and then here we can click on synonyms, and then also gives the antonyms, but usually this already lists the origin of murder, first recorded in 1300 to 1350, Middle English, mordre, murder variant influenced by Old French murdre from don't know if that's merde in French, the correct pronunciation in French. Trying to think of a French word that ends with re. Joie de vivre. So it's murder. From Germanic of murder. See, murder. Old Norse, Morse, Latin Morse, death, compare more. So I think that's it for now. I hope you all enjoyed the broadcast. Let us know in the comments if you know other allegations or accusations made by people for other reasons than the ones already mentioned, or if you have evidence that proves things beyond any reasonable doubt. Let us know your opinion, be an influence on the timeline, not just a passive absorber, but also emanate intelligence, light into the world to make a better future for yourselves and others. That's the idea. And tips about doing that are welcome as well. So share this important video on your timeline. Please hit that like button and subscribe, and see you all next time on Perfect Society. And remember to try something vegan or vegetarian and do stuff for universal peace.